The alley stank of wet asphalt and desperation, a place where hope went to die. 3 cops loomed over Nia Carter, their laughter sharp as broken glass, slicing through the humid night air. She stood alone, her tailored suit a stark contrast to the grime around her, her heart pounding but her face a mask of steel. They didn't know who she was. They didn't care. To them, she was just another black woman in the wrong place at the wrong time, a target for their cruelty. "What's a girl like you doing out here?" Officer Daniels sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. His partner, Officer Reed, chuckled, leaning closer, his breath sour. "Lost your way to the hood?" The third, Officer Malone, stayed silent, but his eyes gleamed with something darker, something eager for trouble. Nia's fists clenched at her sides, her nails biting into her palms. She was no stranger to this decades of sidelong glances, whispered slurs, and doors slammed in her face had forged her resilience. But tonight, their words hit harder, each one a spark threatening to ignite the rage she'd spent years keeping in check. She wasn't just Nia Carter, single mother and survivor of a system stacked against her. She was Dr. Nia Carter, Director of Homeland Security, the youngest ever to hold the title, a woman who'd clawed her way to power through brilliance and grit. And these men, these small-minded bullies in badges, had no idea. The confrontation had started innocently enough, or so it seemed. Nia had been driving home from a late meeting at the Capitol, her mind still buzzing with classified briefings and policy debates. Her sleek black sedan had barely rolled to a stop at a red light when the patrol car's lights flared behind her. Routine, they said. A broken taillight. She knew better. She'd seen that look before, the one that sized her up not as a person, but as a stereotype. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am," Daniels had barked, his tone more command than request. She complied, calm but wary, her hands visible, her movements slow. She knew the drill. She'd learned it as a teenager in Chicago, where her brother had been beaten by cops for looking suspicious. She'd learned it again in college, when she was stopped 3 times in one semester for fitting a description. And now, at 42, with a PhD and a corner office, she was learning it again. The alley was their stage now, a dead end off 14th Street where they'd herded her after a search of her car turned up nothing. The taillight excuse had crumbled fast, but they weren't done. They wanted sport. "You think you're smart, huh?" Reed taunted, circling her like a vulture. "Talking all fancy, driving that nice car. Who'd you steal it from?" Nia's jaw tightened. She could feel the weight of their assumptions, the same ones that had followed her from the South Side to the halls of power. Every promotion, every accolade, had come with whispers, affirmative action hire, diversity quota, she doesn't belong. She'd proven them wrong every time, but it was never enough. Not for men like these, who saw her skin before her credentials, her gender before her authority. "I'm not who you think I am," she said, her voice low but steady, cutting through their laughter like a blade. Daniels snorted, stepping closer, his bulk invading her space. "Oh, we know exactly who you are." "Just another," he stopped short, the slur unspoken but hanging in the air, thick and toxic. Malone finally spoke, his voice a gravelly drawl. "You're in a lot of trouble, lady. Obstructing an investigation. Resisting." Resisting? Nia's eyes narrowed, her pulse racing but her mind razor-sharp. "I've done nothing but cooperate. You have no grounds to detain me." Reed laughed, a harsh bark. "Grounds? We don't need grounds. You're out here, alone, and we say you're a problem." He glanced at his partners, a silent agreement passing between them. They were escalating, pushing her toward a line she refused to cross. Nia's phone buzzed in her pocket, a lifeline she couldn't reach without risking their reaction. She knew the protocol, her protocol. One call, and she could have a federal team here in minutes. But that would mean revealing her identity, and a part of her, the part forged in Chicago's toughest streets, wanted to face this without pulling rank. Not yet. She wanted them to see her, really see her, before they learned her title. "Back off," she said, her voice rising now, carrying the authority she'd earned through years of commanding rooms far more powerful than this alley. "You're making a mistake." Daniels smirked, unimpressed. Big talk for someone about to spend the night in a cell. He reached for his cuffs, the metal glinting under the streetlight. Malone stepped forward, his hand on his baton, his eyes daring her to move. The air grew heavier, the tension coiling like a spring. Nia's mind raced. She could de-escalate, play their game, wait for backup. Or she could fight not with fists, but with the truth. She chose the latter. "My name is Dr. Nia Carter," she said, her voice ringing with clarity. "I'm the Director of Homeland Security. And you're about to regret this." The words landed like a grenade. Daniels froze, his hand hovering over the cuffs. Reed's smirk faltered, uncertainty creeping into his eyes. Malone's grip on his baton tightened, but his bravado wavered. They didn't believe her, not fully, but the seed of doubt was planted. "You're lying," Daniel spat, though his voice lacked conviction. "Homeland Security? You?" Nia held his gaze, unyielding. "Call it in. Check my ID. Or better yet, call your precinct captain. Ask him who I am." Reed hesitated, glancing at his partners. "She's bluffing," he muttered, but he pulled out his radio, his fingers fumbling. The crackle of static filled the alley as he relayed her name to dispatch. Nia stood taller, her presence commanding despite the odds. She was no damsel, no victim. She was a force, and they were about to learn it. The radio crackled back, the dispatcher's voice clipped and urgent. "Confirming, Dr. Nia Carter, Director of Homeland Security. Stand down immediately." The color drained from Daniel's face. Reed's radio slipped slightly in his hand. Malone took a step back, his baton lowering. The alley, once their domain, now felt like a trap closing around them. Nia didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She let the moment sink in, let their fear replace their arrogance. "You thought you could break me," she said, her voice quiet but seismic. "You thought my skin, my gender, made me less. You were wrong." Daniel stammered, his authority crumbling. "Ma'am, we didn't know." "You didn't want to know," she cut him off, her words sharp as a whip. "You saw what you wanted to see. And that's the problem." She stepped forward, closing the distance between them, her presence towering despite her average height. "This isn't just about me. It's about every black woman, every black man, every person you've ever treated like this. You don't get to hide behind your badge anymore." The distant wail of sirens broke the silence, growing louder. Backup was coming, not for her, but for them. Nia's phone buzzed again, and this time she answered, her voice calm but commanding as she spoke to her team. "Send a unit to 14th and Elm. We've got a situation." As the officers stood frozen, the weight of their actions settling over them, Nia felt a flicker of something beyond anger, hope. This moment, this reckoning, could be a spark. Not just for her, but for every person who'd been judged, dismissed, or brutalized because of their skin. She'd fought her whole life for justice, not just in boardrooms but in moments like this, where the world's ugliness met her unyielding strength. The sirens grew louder, red and blue lights painting the alley walls. Nia turned to face the approaching vehicles, her silhouette a symbol of resilience. She wasn't done. Not with these officers, not with the system, not with the fight. The red and blue lights flooded the alley, casting stark shadows across the cracked pavement. Dr. Nia Carter stood unwavering as two black SUVs screeched to a halt, their doors flying open to reveal her security detail, 4 agents in tactical vests, their faces grim with purpose. The 3 officers, Daniels, Reed, and Malone, shrank under the glare of the arriving team, their bravado evaporating like mist. Nia's gaze never left them, her silence louder than any accusation. She didn't need to speak, the truth was unraveling their world faster than words could. Agent Torres, her lead security officer, approached swiftly, his voice low but urgent. "Director Carter, are you all right?" "I'm fine," she replied, her tone steady but laced with steel. "These officers, however, need to answer for their actions." She gestured toward Daniels, whose face was now a mask of panic, and Reed, who stared at the ground as if it might swallow him whole. Malone, the quiet one, shifted uneasily, his baton now limp at his side. Torres nodded, signaling his team to secure the scene. "We've got this, ma'am. Precinct captain's been notified. He's on his way." Nia's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't want the precinct captain's apologies or excuses. She wanted accountability, something she'd spent her career fighting for, from the streets of Chicago to the marble corridors of D.C. This wasn't just about her. It was about every person who'd faced a badge and felt the weight of prejudice instead of protection. The precinct captain, a grizzled man named Hargrove, arrived minutes later, his face a mix of disbelief and dread. He'd heard the call from dispatch, but seeing Nia Carter in person, her suit impeccable, her authority undeniable, hit like a punch. "Director Carter," he stammered, I had no idea. This is a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Nia's voice cut through his words like a blade. "These officers profiled me, harassed me, and threatened me with arrest based on nothing but their biases. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a failure of training, of character, of your system." Hargrove's mouth opened, then closed. He glanced at his officers, who stood like scolded children, their earlier arrogance replaced by fear. "I'll handle this, ma'am. They'll be disciplined." "Disciplined?" Nia stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. "A write-up? A suspension? That's not enough. Not when people like me, black people, women, anyone who doesn't fit your mold are targeted every day. You don't fix a broken system with a slap on the wrist." The crowd that had gathered at the alley's mouth grew thicker, phones raised, capturing every word. Nia felt their eyes, their anger, their hope. She wasn't just speaking to Hargrove, she was speaking to them, to the city, to a country wrestling with its own soul. "Director," Hargrove said, lowering his voice, "let's take this to the precinct. We can sort it out privately." "No," Nia interrupted, her voice rising, carrying the weight of years spent fighting battles no one saw. "This doesn't get swept under the rug. You don't get to hide this behind closed doors. These officers will face consequences, and I'll make sure of it." She turned to Torres. "Get their badge numbers. I want a full report on my desk by morning, every detail, every violation. And I want a meeting with the mayor and the police chief by noon." "Yes, ma'am," Torres replied, already motioning to his team. The officers were escorted to the SUVs, their faces pale, their futures uncertain. Nia watched them go, her heart heavy but resolute. This wasn't victory, not yet. It was a step, one she'd been taking her whole life. Back at her office in the Homeland Security headquarters, Nia sat at her desk, the city skyline glittering beyond her window. The report from Torres was already taking shape, a meticulous catalog of the officers' actions, cross-referenced with body cam footage and witness statements. But her mind wasn't on paperwork. It was on her daughter, Maya, asleep at home, and the world Nia was fighting to build for her. Maya was 16, bright and fierce, with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn streak. Nia had raised her alone since her husband's death a decade ago, pouring every ounce of her strength into giving Maya a life free from the shadows of prejudice. But tonight's events were a stark reminder: no title, no office, no amount of success could fully shield them. Not yet. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a text from her deputy director, Karen Wells, a woman who'd been her mentor and friend for years. "Heard what happened? You okay? Need me to handle the press?" Nia typed back quickly, "I'm fine. No press yet. I want to control the narrative." She paused, then added, "This is bigger than me." She leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. The incident in the alley wasn't just a personal attack, it was a symptom of a disease that had festered for generations. She'd seen it in the data racial profiling stats, use of force reports, complaints buried under bureaucratic red tape. As director, she had the power to push for change, to demand reforms that went beyond one precinct or one city. But power alone wasn't enough. She needed allies, momentum, a movement. The next morning, Nia stood before the mayor and police chief in a conference room that felt too small for the weight of the moment. Mayor Ellison, a polished politician with a knack for dodging hard truths, leaned forward, his hands clasped. Dr. Carter, we're horrified by what happened. Those officers will face consequences. Consequences aren't enough, Nia said, her voice calm but unyielding. I want a task force independent, with real teeth. I want body cam audits, mandatory bias training, and a public report on every profiling incident in this city for the past 5 years. The police chief, a veteran named Callahan, bristled. With respect, Director, you're overreaching. Our officers aren't perfect, but they're not the enemy. Nia's eyes narrowed. When an officer sees my skin and assumes I'm a criminal, they're not serving Methiri endangering me. That's not protection. That's prejudice. Ellison shifted uncomfortably. We'll look into reforms, but change takes time. Time. Nia leaned forward, her voice rising with controlled fury. How many more black men and women have to be humiliated, beaten, or killed before you decide it's time? I'm not asking for promises. I'm demanding action. The room fell silent. Callahan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Ellison nodded slowly, sensing the political weight of her words. We'll form the task force, he said finally. You have my word. Nia didn't trust his word, but it was a start. She'd hold him to through pressure, through policy, through the public now watching her every move. The alley incident had gone viral, clips of her confrontation spreading across X and news outlets. People were angry, inspired, divided. Some called her a hero, others called her entitled, a diversity hire, weaponizing her title. She read the comments, felt the sting, and kept going. Over the next weeks, Nia worked relentlessly. She met with community leaders, activists, and families who'd lost loved ones to police violence. She listened to their stories, their pain fueling her resolve. She pushed for the task force to include civilians, not just bureaucrats, ensuring voices from the margins were heard. She testified before Congress, her words measured but searing, laying bare the human cost of systemic bias. The officers faced consequences. Daniels and Reed were suspended without pay, Malone was demoted, and all 3 were under investigation for misconduct. But Nia knew punishment alone wouldn't heal the wound. She launched a national initiative through Homeland Security, partnering with local agencies to overhaul training and accountability measures. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, as she sat with Maya at their kitchen table, Nia felt the weight of it all. Maya looked up from her homework, her eyes searching. Mom, why do you keep fighting? You're already at the top. You could just stop. Nia smiled, reaching for her daughter's hand. Because, baby, the top isn't the end. It's just a better view of how much work is left. I fight for you, for us, for everyone who deserves better. Maya nodded, her expression softening. I'm proud of you, she said quietly. The words hit Nia harder than any insult in that alley. She pulled Maya into a hug, her heart full. The fight wasn't over, it never would be. But every step forward, every heart changed, was a victory. As Nia looked out at the city, she saw a world still fractured, still hurting, but capable of healing. She'd keep pushing, not just for justice, but for a future where no one had to prove their worth to be seen. Where do you stand on justice, on right and wrong? Share your voice, because change starts when we speak.